Partum the Mess, a podcast about humorous, inspirational, and educational experiences presented by first-time parents trying to navigate parenthood and staying sane doing it. I'm your host, Brittany, and today's guest is my husband, Phil. This is episode 4, and today we'll catch up with you and then have Phil share his thoughts and experiences being a first-time dad. So what's going on in our lives, Phil?
Just trying to navigate the everyday parenting, which is difficult, especially as first time of twins. There's a whole lot that we're trying to learn and trying to get the hang of. And oftentimes it takes both of us doing something at the exact same time, which makes it a little difficult because it requires both of us to be helping, and neither one of us really gets a break.
A lot of times I sit back when I'm home. Phil works, and so I am able to be home with the kids. And a lot of times I sit back and I look at the situation, analyze the circus that it is, and recognize that somebody looking on might think it's just so crazy. I mean, many parents with multiple kids could probably feel that way, but kids of the same age is a little different situation.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing that we don't have a live video feed into our house, because I imagine the viewers might wonder what we're doing.
Sometimes we joke that we have triplets because we also have a 3-year-old puppy, technically not a puppy, Leah, and with we call them the Twinkies crying and Leah barking, it definitely is like a circus a lot of the time.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think that I've been paying attention to lately, which is making me laugh but also kind of frustrating, is how much differently our kids eat, and how much one of them makes so much more of a mess than the other. I was watching Sister eat today, and I was noticing the funny way in which she does it, and I think the way that contributes to why she makes such a mess. She kind of grabs her food in a fist, like, and then kind of feeds it into her mouth like some kind of a worm. Like the like the food is going through her fingers like it would go through an intestine or something, and I think it falls out of her fingers before most of it gets into her mouth, and it just falls everywhere, and she just gets food everywhere, and it's such a nightmare for me. I don't like messy things, and Brittany can attest to that.
I thought you were going to talk about Buddy, not Swiss, because Buddy tends to find a way to get food anywhere except his bib.
Well, I don't understand that exactly, because he'll grab fistfuls of food just like Swiss does, but he shoves his entire fist in his mouth, and so there's not really anywhere that the food can fall unless it's in his mouth. I guess when he pulls his fist back out, then some food comes with it. He makes a mess too, but Swiss is just like everywhere. Like tonight we gave them some kind of a rice and beans and a chicken dish, and I think Swiss got more rice on her legs than she did in her mouth. Like, clearly not, because she ate a lot, but man, it was just such a nightmare looking at all the rice that was stuck to her legs.
I know, and then she gestures that she wants more, and if only she understood where she could access more food.
Just reach down in your lap and get more food there.
Yeah. Well, some things that I've been dealing with a lot, and Phil deals with this as well, but during the day, one of my sanity savers is Marco Polo. They're not sponsoring us, but it'd sure be nice if they were, because I use it like it's my lifeblood. I rely on it to communicate with friends and family. And anyway, so often I'm Marco Poloing, and if you're not familiar with Marco Polo, it's an app that allows you to do instant videos. I don't know a better way to describe it.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you imagine a text message, you can send it at any time, and the recipient can just get it at any time. That's kind of how Marco Polo is. You record a video message, and it just sends it, and it delivers it to the recipient, and they can watch it at any time, and they can watch it unlimited amount of times. And
so I love this, but many times when I'm using Marco Polo, it seems like it's a good time for my kids to start screaming, and there's not really a rhyme or reason. They're just exploring their vocals. Yay for development!
As a recipient of these polos, I can attest that they are often screaming when she sends them to me.
So that's difficult. It's frustrating. Every parent that has children, I'm sure has experienced this, but that's a struggle that I've been experiencing. And recently I had family come into town, and they were, of course, excited to see the Twinkies and excited to help out however they could, but it sometimes adds a measure of stress when the quote unquote routine, if we have one, is thrown off. I mean, we make every effort to have a routine, but it may not look like we're very successful with that. But, so my family being in town was great, but at the same time, there's the added measure of stress trying to, at least for me, I feel like I have to entertain, make sure they have a good time, make sure my kids get time with their grandparents, make sure that they get their naps. That's just a big struggle.
I sure hope that their idea of a good time is watching our kids and interacting with the kids, because that's about all they get to do when they're here, because that's about all we're doing at any given time. If the kids are awake, we are at their beck and call all the time. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, they're just over a year old, and they're just kind of at that age where they're just really needy. Like, they just need you to do everything for them and with them.
Another struggle that I've been dealing with lately is getting out of the house. I've been wanting to go do things. Phil can attest that I'm much more of a, what's the opposite of a homebody? An outbody? An outside dweller? I don't know, not necessarily in nature, but I enjoy getting out of the house, and with or without the children. And it can be really a struggle, because if I don't go with the children, then I have to prepare everything and get their meals ready or get them ready for bed. Or if I do take the children, then I have to pack the diaper bag and I have to get their meals ready, because regardless, they're going to need to eat. Dang it, why do kids always need to eat? So that's been a struggle. I think these experiences that I'm sharing aren't unique, but I hope that when you hear us share these things as we catch up, you can relate if you're going through it as well, or you can reminisce on your time in the trenches. So thanks for sharing your experiences. I know that we live together, but sometimes we don't sit and talk.
And there are plenty more experiences, but I feel like I can't think about them on the spot.
That's fine. But the purpose of you being here today is to share more of your experiences rather than our experiences. So before I more or less turn the time over to Phil, I want to point out that as the mother in the situation, I had my own experience. And, I went an entire pregnancy with the children and having my own experiences and thoughts and things. And I think that I got plenty of attention for that, but I don't know how much attention was really given to Phil or to fathers in general through the pregnancy. And so I'm excited to hear him highlight some of his experiences from the time that he, maybe even before he found out that we were expecting, if he has things on that, through now.
A funny kind of backstory, I think, about the way that she announced her pregnancy is that we were actually on a trip to go to a friend's wedding across the country. So we were not even at home, and she knew that she was pregnant the whole time, but she did not tell me. And I had no idea that she was pregnant during that whole trip. And now that I look back on it, I see a few things that I didn't catch at the time, but now I can kind of see, like, I don't know, just some times where she was maybe a little crankier than she usually is. And I wondered, like, why are you when we're on this trip, which is like the thing that you always want to do together. But then when we came back, everything was normal to me. Nothing seemed out of place because I'm oblivious like that. And then one day she brought me a little card, and it was really cute. I don't think it will do it justice to explain because it was kind of an inside joke, but she essentially told me that she was pregnant. And I thought, okay, like this was kind of expected because we weren't trying, but we weren't not trying. And so it was just kind of, if it happens, it happens. And it did. And so I didn't think anything of it really that she was pregnant. Like it didn't come as a super big surprise. And so I was just like, oh, okay, well, I guess this is happening. And I guess now my life is going to change. And me as a person, I do better in that kind of scenario anyway, where stuff isn't planned and I fly by the seat of my pants a little bit. And then she kind of pointed out, oh, I think I remember what you said. You told me to look at the picture closer. You said, look at the ultrasound and tell me what you see. And so I kind of looked closer because, I don't know what an ultrasound looks like for a 6-week-old baby or whatever.
I found out that I was pregnant at 5 weeks based on the pee on the stick kind of test. But then just quick little addition. I actually had gone in to the doctor because I wasn't sure if I was miscarrying. I had gone in at 6 weeks. And so I went in at 6 weeks and the doctor said, it looks like it's twins, but it's not because you're just seeing through the placenta or something like that. And then at 7 weeks, which is the day that I told Phil, I had gone in again because I again thought I was miscarrying and they confirmed that it's twins. So they printed out this ultrasound. So it was 7 weeks.
Okay, so 7 weeks. So I look at it a little bit closer and I look at what to me looks like 2 tadpoles, just 2 kind of black spots. And I don't know because I've never been able to read these things and they're
like ink blot tests.
Yeah, basically. And so I don't know why my brain told me, like, why would she have me look at it again? I guess is what I was thinking. And so and then I saw the 2 spots and then I think I just asked, is it twins? And she said, yep. And I think I sat down. I was like, okay, now I need to sit down. But I still had the same feeling of, well, I've got to do this now. It's not something that I've ever looked forward to, but life is going to change. And if it's going to change by 1, then I guess it might as well change by 2.
So was your level, what do you think your level of enthusiasm was at that point? Was it sort of, what a great thing?
It's just, I don't know. I just felt like, what did you ask? What was my level of
enthusiasm? You mean just now? What did I ask?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I would probably put it at like a 1.
Oh, one being super excited.
Yeah. No.
The other way.
I was not. Well, I can't. Look, what can I
want to
say?
clarify. I don't mean to paint Phil in a bad light with that, but I'm highlighting that to kind of show the dynamic that you just weren't hoping and planning on it. But you were expecting that it would happen, as you already said, because we weren't trying to prevent it. Mm-hmm. And so you took it for what it was, the reality that you were now a father and you were going to step up.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes it sound like you were a deadbeat before. That's not what I mean.
Yeah, that I would just step up. Like I said, my life was just going to change, and that's just how it was. And so enthusiasm, I wasn't enthusiastic. I mentioned earlier, I just never really liked kids very much. And I didn't not want them, but I didn't want them. Like, I didn't have this desire to be a parent. I was okay with the idea, and I was okay with the concept of having kids, but I was very aware that it was going to change my life drastically, and that was perhaps the part that I was not quite prepared for.
Okay. So what were some of your thoughts and feelings through my pregnancy? I obviously could identify several things that were difficult for me during my pregnancy, and you can be candid. What was difficult for you while I was pregnant?
Dealing with you. No, she actually was not really that bad. The sickness was not super bad, and it didn't last very long. Comparatively to stories from other women. And, I had to deal with a few sessions of her throwing up in the toilet and whatever, which was expected and
or
was
all
fine.
over the kitchen and things like that.
Wherever it came up and she couldn't hold it in. But for the most part, I feel like life kind of went on, business as usual for me. I didn't really need to do a lot of things. Like I worked all day. I just went to work and she went to all of her appointments, and I'm not super sentimental about babies. In fact, when they were born, the doctors wanted me to come to the other side of the shield because I was near Brittany's head in the OR, and I was just like, no, I'm good. And they're like, do you want to cut the umbilical cord? I'm like, no, I'm okay. Like, I wasn't grossed out. I wasn't worried that I wouldn't be able to handle the sight or anything. I just didn't care. Like, these kinds of things don't matter to me. They don't get me all warm and fuzzy. Like, and so I didn't want to really go to the doctor's appointments. I didn't really care that much to see the ultrasounds, or at least be there live for the ultrasounds. Now, when she came home and showed me the pictures, I was like, oh, cool, more ink blot tests. And when they finally started to take shape, then it was a little bit more interesting. But I just never got really sentimental about it. So I worked all day. She went to go to all the doctor's appointments. And of course she kept me updated. She let me know what was happening and any risks or, you know, what the doctor said, but I never felt like I really needed to be there. And I don't know, I'm sure she would have liked for me to be there.
I don't know, though. I mean, yes, sure. But I recognized that there wasn't... I had a lot of appointments. I don't know if every mother who's pregnant with twins has this, but our doctor referred me over to maternal fetal medicine at the local hospital. So I guess I had about double the amount of appointments. And that would be just really impractical for Phil to take off that time. And I can't remember how his time off worked, how his allowance was. I didn't want to take away any time that he might be able to take off once the children come. So it was kind of dual-sided that I recognized that it wasn't that important. I could go to the appointments. Like you said, relatively, I was pretty healthy. I mean, I wasn't super sick. I was mobile. I wasn't on bed rest the entire time. I worked until the day I delivered.
This is true. I can vouch.
Yeah. And so it wasn't that big of a deal to me that he didn't come. I mean, I'm much more sentimental. So if he was really into that and he wanted to come and hold my hand and gush over the ultrasounds, I would have been fine with that, but it wasn't offensive to me that he wasn't.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then up through the end, like she said, she worked until the day she delivered. Oh, I want to jump back a little bit. So we did one of those gender reveals. You know, the thing where you gather everyone together and you surprise everyone the gender of your baby, but we intentionally kept it a secret that it was twins from my family, and with the exception of me and Brittany and one of my friends and a couple of her closest friends, including the gal that facilitated the gender reveal, no one else knew that it was twins. And there were a couple of times that I slipped. I accidentally said when they're coming, and I think a couple of my coworkers sort of caught on to that, but they didn't say anything. Anyway, so we did the whole gender reveal thing, and it was a surprise to us what the genders were. So it was kind of a double whammy. We were surprising everyone with the fact that it was twins and the genders, and then also we were being surprised at what the genders were. And so the method we came up with, or maybe I want to take all the credit for it, the method that I came up with, because we talked about, you bring out the opaque black balloon, and it's like, okay, we're going to pop the balloon to find out the gender. Oh, what's this? A second balloon?
What?
Then the secret's blown already right there. And so I came up with the idea of getting a large canvas and covering it with a butcher paper, and then having cans of silly string where we spray at the same time, and then depending on the color of the silly string, we'll know what the genders of the babies were. And we orchestrated it so cleverly that we would draw a 2 with our silly string. I drew the top part of the 2, and Brittany drew the bottom part of the 2 at the same time. And it worked out really well, because on the videos, we've got videos of it, we spray, and it's so funny on the video. You can see everyone's reaction, and when they see 2 colors come out, and they're immediately confused, and they're like, wait, and they're thinking, I'm sure they thought, oh, there must be a mistake. How are we going to know? And then when they stared at it for a few more seconds, and they realized that we had drawn a 2 on the paper, then everyone started going, wait, what? And started freaking out. So it was a lot of fun, and it was really successful, with the exception of that both of my parents were on a plane back from, I think, Oregon, visiting my grandfather or something, and so they weren't present. But that's okay. Other than that, it worked out really well. So that was a really fun part of the pregnancy, and taking the progression pictures was fun, just to see how Brittany progressed along from, the baby bump all the way through to the end. But then the rest of it, I mean, went pretty smoothly. She was, of course, pretty uncomfortable for the last few weeks. And yeah, she, well, I don't know, maybe you could tell the story better. Maybe we don't want to get so deep into it because it's a really long story. But the day that she went into labor, the short story is she went to the doctor and they said, no, you're fine, basically. And then she came back home and she came and visited home. And we had just recently set up a little video camera to watch our dog while we were both working. And so I happened to be checking the camera, and I've got a really cute picture of her playing with the dog, which was just moments before her water broke.
And he just caught that. He just happened to be looking at the camera and took a screenshot.
Yeah. So
cool
that was
little
really
moment.
Cool. And my coworkers were saying, maybe you should go home. And I said, no, her doctor said she was okay. And then, I don't know, less than an hour later, I get a Marco Polo and she's saying, we need to go to the hospital now. And so I told my boss and I was like, I got to go. I think babies are coming. Actually, baby, because oh, wait, no, I guess they knew at that time it was twins. So, and then he said, yeah, man, go. Because this my boss was a good guy. He had a couple of kids himself. So he knew, he understood. So I headed home and we headed to the hospital and checked in, and only a couple of hours later, they were wheeling her into the OR.
About an hour, I'd say they were born from the time we arrived at the hospital.
And fortunately for us, they were healthy. There were some very minor complications that resulted in Buddy going to the NICU for like half a day. So it really wasn't that bad. And then he was released from the NICU. A few days later, we were home. And thus started the saga of, I have no idea what I'm doing. In fact, I've got a picture of me holding Buddy, and my face is like deer in the headlights because the reality was hitting that, guess what? You're home and there are no more 24/7 nurses to help you, and now you too have to keep these tiny humans alive and take care of your dog at the same time.
So, would there be anything else that you haven't already highlighted that you would say has been some of the hardest parts for you?
Well, since I mentioned earlier that I was never really that into being a parent, the first few months were hard because even at a year in, they still depend solely on you. But I think the first few months they were really difficult because, for one, there was the adjustment to getting used to taking care of these kids around the clock. And then there was also just the fact that they didn't really interact with us. They just eat and they poop and they sleep, and there's just no real interaction. You can hold them, but they don't really seem to appreciate it or anything like that. So the first 3 months, I would say, were very difficult. And it wasn't until the baby started smiling at me that I started to feel like this might actually be worth it. And of course, the rest of the remaining 9 months was full of all kinds of stressors and difficulties that were more personal difficulties, and me trying to adjust to being a father of twins. But there's little moments here and there that are sweet, like when they start laughing, and they start imitating what you're doing. Like we can get the kids to click their tongues now by, we go and they imitate it and they imitate sounds, and so that's really fun. And they're just now starting to walk, and trying to get them to walk is fun. But overall, I guess to reiterate your question, Britt, was one of the hardest moments for me were just the first few months when they weren't very interactive, and it just felt like it was just really thankless. And then, of course, hard moments come all throughout being a parent, when they're sick and you just feel so bad for them, and when they don't want to cooperate, and when you're trying to change a diaper and all they want to do is roll it, which, by the way, I've complained about that a few times. You spend so much time trying to get them to roll over, and then not long after that, you're trying to get them to stop rolling over. So I don't know what the doctors are so concerned about these milestones. Like, okay, I know why, but I'm just like, we wanted you to roll over for so long, and now I want you to stop rolling over.
Well, thank you for sharing those. I know that it's hard to highlight some of the difficult things sometimes. At least as a mother, it's almost shame-inducing to talk about these things that are difficult, that it's not just naturally good for you. So I can imagine it could be difficult as a father as well to talk about things that maybe doesn't feel very good, to talk about things that you don't like. I don't know. Is that difficult for you to talk about those things, or is it just natural because you don't like them?
That's it. It's natural because I don't really like them. Since I'm not very emotional and very sentimental about babies, it's easier for me to say, I hate this moment and I don't want to do this, and I really hate the bedtime routine, and I really hate this and I really hate that. But there are good moments interspersed in there. And overall, I think parenting sucks. Like, I don't find it enjoyable, at least as far as taking care of the kids and having to do everything for them. It really sucks. I don't like it at all. But there are moments where having children is pretty rewarding. I'm not sure how much I feel like it makes it worth it. Mm-hmm. But there's certainly some sweet moments. And one of those being when I come home from work and Swiss and Buddy just light up and they just giggle and smile at me. And when they started to crawl, they would start crawling toward me, and that felt pretty good. So I like that.
Going back to my statement a minute ago, saying sometimes as moms, it can be difficult to talk about the hard things. There's some mom guilt there. Do you pick up on that amongst your male friends who are also fathers, or is there any, I don't really know that there's dad groups out there, that especially not ones that you're in, so I don't know that you'd really have this come up, but I know that you have friends who are fathers. So have you perceived any kind of dad shame or anything like that?
No, at least not that they tell me. If they're feeling shamed for any reason, they're not saying it to me. So
I guess, do you feel any shame? Do you feel like there's any kind of projection of a standard that a father should be? 'Cause sometimes that's the case with moms.
Not really.
Do you think dads are more forgiving of each other than moms might be?
Probably.
Maybe that's getting deep. Maybe we shouldn't go that direction.
Yeah, I think I'll feel this probably later in life when I'm having to teach them things and get really frustrated when they're not learning or not doing. If I teach them good morals and that kind of thing, and they make the opposite decision, that's probably going to feel almost like I'm ashamed that I failed as a father. But thus far, I would say not really. I don't have much of that.
Fair enough. So speaking of the future, what do you look forward to?
I look forward to not having to do absolutely everything for them.
Absolutely everything?
Okay.
Swiss can worm that food in her mouth all by herself.
That's true. They do feed themselves, which is nice. But, I don't know. I'm not excited for the teenage years necessarily, but
when you're always wrong and the worst.
Yeah, but approaching those years where they're potty trained and they can bathe themselves, that kind of things, and they can be more interactive and show more of their personalities. And myself, I'm a bit of a gamer. Video games and board games are probably my biggest hobbies, and so probably being able to play games with the kids and have them comprehend what we're doing, even if we're playing kid games. I look forward to playing some very simplistic kid games with them and teach them, how to lose gracefully, how to win gracefully, and just kind of understand gaming with other people.
I can't wait for us to practice how to do that ourselves so we can teach them.
Yeah, you're a bit of a sore loser, aren't you?
Just kidding. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that subject generally. Is there any either advice or thoughts that you would give to a father who just found out that he's expecting, and if it's different, that he's expecting twins?
Just be present, be helpful. Your wife is going to feel like garbage, probably, at least sometimes, and just be helpful and be supportive, I think, is probably about the thing that I would stress the most.
And I'd like to say that Phil has never ceased to...
Don't get all mushy on me now.
...surprise me with his sincerity, because he's usually a jerk.
Oh, there it is.
No, but I've appreciated whenever he's said things like, thank you for feeding our children, regarding nursing, or like spoon feeding them, preparing food, but those sort of things mean a lot. With that, we're going to wrap up this episode. thanks to Phil for joining me on this episode to chat about his experiences with fatherhood. As usual, we're going to share a recipe that's been helpful to us, but I'm going to take a little bit of a different twist and ask Phil, what's your favorite thing to feed the kids?
Whatever's the simplest.
What's that?
Well, even though it requires me, not requires, but I usually ends up being me feeding them. We call it mush, which is just mixing up the baby, what do you call it? The baby granola, the baby cereal with formula and some baby food. And then they usually end up eating it or I end up having to feed it to them, which for me works out okay because they make a lot less of a mess and it's less that I have to clean up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Well, I'll also share a recipe that I have enjoyed lately that I shared to our family. I am actually looking up here the title that I saved on my Pinterest. It's Mexicali hash brown taco casserole. And I don't make it exactly like the recipe shows because we're kind of picky eaters. We don't like things that are good for us. I'm just kidding. Like peppers, we're not a fan of, or I don't know. That's in this recipe. So I'll talk a little bit about the recipe, but we'll have it linked. We'll have it in the links on our Instagram page and then also on our website. Again, it's called Mexicali hash brown taco casserole. And the ingredients are basically cheese, ground beef, onions, some seasoning, and then topped with hash brown and cheese. And it's, I assume, Phil, you liked it because you ate it.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, so hopefully that helps. I know that many moms, including myself, hate planning a dinner every night forever. So hopefully that's just one less recipe that you have to come up with. Join us next week for another episode where we will share more of our experiences, and hopefully those experiences help you navigate this treacherous terrain. And just remember, we're in this together and it's not a competition. Join us next week and please pardon the mess.
We're making memories.